So he's seen as a sort of like a civil rights icon and someone who stands for identity and inclusion and racial equity in America. But he's being propped up by the industry because it makes white people feel like they're included in that sort of liberation movement.
Right, yeah, so I think he's being used as almost like an avatar by white people to be to feel like they're included in black culture specifically. The phrasing that he uses in his music, the type of the imagery in the music video, it's kind of creating the type of image that like white people are being included in black culture. All the while they still get to enjoy the privileges of being white, but they still get to
Yeah,
indulge.
I didn't want to say that because that's the assumption. Because I didn't want to say that because they'll say, "Oh, that's not what we're thinking," but they get both. Whereas if I'm black and I'm in a movement, whether it's Malcolm X or Tupac or Chuck D or anybody else, or Lumumba or Malcolm or Martin Luther King, when we do the movement, we're still black, and we still have to go through a lot more suffering for what liberation means. I think that might be something that's valid.
I feel like with white people, it comes from a desire to experience the same emotions that black people go through with, like, the blues, our culture, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, you're going to so it's not about guilt. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Whereas with us, it comes from actual trauma. We're making art out of the things we suffered through.
This is the first episode that we're having on Community TV Africa about the beef between Drake and Kendrick the Smurf Lamar. All right, I'm here with Mehmet Janadu, who's one of the cool kids in Brooklyn, or not Brooklyn, Staten Island, and I'm here with Janadu in Staten. I'm not in Staten Island. I'm in Washington D.C. So Mehmet, let's jump straight to it. So the story that you're talking about deals with the beef between Drake and Kendrick Lamar, in which purportedly Kendrick Lamar has destroyed Drake and it's caused some controversy with the song "They Not Like Us." But you have a view, and if I get it right, are you saying that Kendrick Lamar is being propped up right now as a symbol of identity and what's the word I would use? Thank God we're on camera here. So he's seen as a sort of like a civil rights icon and someone who stands for identity and inclusion and racial equity in America, but he's being propped up by the industry because it makes white people feel like they're included in that sort of liberation movement. What do you think? Can you give me a breakdown about that?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, so I think he's being used as almost like an avatar by white people to be to feel like they're included in black culture specifically. Right.
Yeah.
So using the phrasing that he uses in his music, the type of the imagery in the music video, it's kind of creating the type of image that like white people are being included in black culture.
Yeah. So it's an avatar and they're projecting themselves and they feel like they're part of it. So to me, that means that they get to continue being white, but they also get to, through him, to feel like they're including in that. And I'm not going to say not have guilt about it, but feel like now their existence is justified and thereby, by extension, their viewpoint, especially the liberal viewpoint in America, is that okay now? All of this is dealt with through this type of inclusion that he gives us. Is that kind of close to what you're also saying? Yeah.
Yeah. And all the while, they still get to enjoy the privileges of being white, but they still get to indulge.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that because that's the assumption. Because I didn't want to say that because they'll say, "Oh, that's not what we're thinking," but they get both. Whereas if I'm black and I'm in a movement, whether it's Malcolm X or Tupac or Chuck D or anybody else, or Lumumba or Malcolm or Martin Luther King, when we do the movement, we're still black, and we still have to go through a lot more suffering for what liberation means. I think that might be something that's valid. What do you think? Yeah.
I feel like with white people, it comes from a desire to experience the same emotions that black people go through with, like, the blues, our culture, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, you're going to so it's not about guilt. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas with us, it comes from actual trauma. We're making art out of the things we suffered through.
Yes. So, and from what you're saying then there, it sounds like that trauma that we've been through, and this can be even linked to what maybe Kendrick Lamar's song should really be, "They're Not Like Us," is that what we've been through creates people like Mahalia Jackson, who sings the blues, Kanye West, who's a rapper but who has like a lot of soul, John Coltrane, jazz, Sade, all of these guys. It's actually a gift, and I think that whites or people who haven't suffered the way that we suffer actually want to have that type of soul, which is actually a conciliation for what we've been through, and they don't have it. And they think that by creating this avatar and going just on the surface, because Kendrick Lamar's song goes on the surface. He talks about 40 Acres and a Mule. He talks about the history. He talks about slavery, but he talks about it on the surface in some of these songs that he's been putting out, but I don't think he goes into the depth, into the particular things. Like if you listen to a lot of rappers, like a lot of people say that, okay, trap music is like degenerate music or whatever, but trap music actually expresses pain. And when they're rapping, they talk about specific situations they've been through, guys like Kodak Black. But with Kendrick Lamar, I'm not saying, I've heard Kendrick Lamar's earlier music, and he goes into specifics and talks about things in an ironic way. But in this one, he sort of glosses over it. And from what I understand from what you're saying is that this is the only way they can understand the type of suffering we've gone. They can only understand it superficially. So therefore, I think that they're not like us is actually very superficial. It has a catchy hook. It has remembering lines like A minor, and then he's talking about Drake being a pedophile, and then he sort of glosses over the history of Black pain and suffering, but doesn't go into depth. What do you think? Yeah.
I'd argue that he's almost being intentionally vague when it comes to the meaning of the song. Like I read an interview somewhere, he was like, "Oh, the meaning of the song is the type of man I represent. You know, the values that I stand for."
Yeah. We read that. Yeah.
So I think
but he
he's
never
being
actually said specifically what it is. You know.
Yeah. He's being vague to make it so that white people can read the interview and be like, "Oh, you know, he could be talking about me too. You know, this can include white people as well."
So you think, and thank you, man, you're brilliant. You're making me look dumb here, young boy. But anyway, you're right. So, because I noticed it was vague, I'm like, okay, because I think he's backtracking. Because at first people say, oh, it means Drake, and Drake is fake and appropriating the culture, and maybe people like Drake who are maybe Black or may not be fully Black are appropriating our culture. They're not like us. But he seems like he backtracks from that, because to me that's a ridiculous argument. Drake's dad is a Black American, and you can't tell me that Drake is not Black and that he's not. And that he's appropriating rap. I don't hear him saying violent lyrics. He doesn't try to pretend like he's from the streets. But going back to what you're saying, he was vague. Then he said, well, I'm just talking about people who are like me and have my experience. But he never gave us a particular. Like, I'll give you a particular for me. My mom passed away from cancer when I was young, and I remember seeing her the last day, and I remember trying to get her to eat food, and she didn't want to eat it, and I felt bad about it, and she fell down on the floor. Then the next day I remembered it, and I felt sad. That's the blues, because I'm talking about it. Then I can talk about it. Well, I'm with you now, and I wish your grandma could see you. You see, now that's the blues. That's feeling. But and I love you too, young man. But the point I'm making is that when you're listening to this album or the lyrics of that song, there's no particulars and there's nothing that sticks out. You can even go to like music like Dr. Dre and them made with gangster music. They have a song called Little Homies, where it talks about the young guys on the streets killing him. And Snoop says, oh, the young guy killed me. I was bullying him around. And as I died, I wonder, how could this happen? There's no narrative, and they're not like us. And I don't see narratives in the last couple of albums that Kendrick Lamar says. I think he's been propped up by liberal white media to have this sort of, like you said, vague freedom chant. But to me, it looks like minstrelsy, because the dancing, there's a lot of, we have attitude and everything. There's a lot of dancing and smiling or even trying to look tough. But there's nothing there, because he's not talking about any particular experience. What do you think? What are your thoughts? Yeah.
You know, like you said, it's almost like a minstrel show. You know, he has you saw Serena Williams crip walking and stuff.
Oh yeah, it looked like minstrelsy to me, to be honest with you. But go ahead. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's like you said. You know, it's very surface level. It's almost like an exhibit of what could be black culture without actually going into. Yeah.
And we see that in a lot of art, because have you seen some of the paintings where they have like the totally Black face and everything? Because this is what white people think it means to be Black. They think that it just means a sort of dead, sort of blank zombie pain or whatever, or something shallow like minstrelsy. Like when you listen to jazz back in the day, the way that white people play jazz and talk like Black people seemed minstrelsy. And to me, that Super Bowl scene, it looked like minstrelsy, because people were running around, putting their hands up and all this, but there was no depth to it. There was no pain. It's just like, oh, they're not like us. They're not like us. And my question is, what type of freedom are they celebrating? Is it the freedom just to say, you're not like me or whatever, or look at me, I'm defying you? But there's no real act of defiance. Guys like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, their defiance cost them death. And that's why it means more. It doesn't mean that you just go on stage and tell people, oh, you're not like me, or they're not like us. And like you said, white folks all over the world are singing that song. If they're singing that song, it means you're not saying nothing, man. That's all I got to say. What do you have to say, Mehmet? Yeah.
You know, even with the Super Bowl show, it leaves enough interpretation for people to be able to like get what they want from the performance without actually having to, you know, derive any actual meaning. You know.
Yeah, and so this goes back. So there's a guy called have you heard of Joseph Campbell, who wrote The Power of Myth?
No.
So he said that when you watch mythologies, like let's say you watch Batman, He says Batman has something for everybody. If you want action, you've got it. If you want drama, you've got it. But if you're somebody crazy like me and you go into the depths of the sea, it has the deeper stuff. When you saw your dad and your mom get killed, and you go into the Joker, you go through asylums, your girlfriend gets killed. So it works for everybody at every level because it's vague enough, or not vague enough, it's general enough so that whatever you want to take out of it, you can take out of it because there's no contradictions. So it's the same thing with They Not Like Us. It could mean anything. It could mean you ain't cool like us. It could mean you're not black. It could mean you're not like Drake, who's whack and he's not like off the streets. It could be whatever you want. And I think, as you said, a lot of white liberal media and also movement, not a lot of people who are now included within the what we call like Black Lives Matter, or people who take this identity view of America without thinking about the social and the economic stuff that we know. Because you live in New York and you know what poor black kids are going through. They think that they can just have these phrases or these attitudes without addressing the fact that the black nation in America is going through a genocide. We're killing each other. Our young men are killing each other. We don't have role models. We don't have activists. And so even for black people, it's sort of like, oh yeah, well, at least we got, They Not Like Us. To me, that's a shallow victory. So what do you think about that? That not only is it a way, is he an avatar for white people? Do you think he might be an avatar for some black people too, who don't want to actually not wake up, because I think we all know we're bad, but who don't want to actually admit that right now we are in a really bad position? So do you think he might be? What would you say?
It's a shallow form of pride, I think,
I do think even for black people. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
No, yeah, I do think there are a lot of black people who see and they're like, oh, this is what it means to be black. Look at us. It's good to see black people band together, but this doesn't actually solve any, problems within the community.
Yeah, and also I think that even within our communities, a lot of black people watch it and be like, "You go, Serena. You go. You show them. You did it in Wimbledon." You know what I'm saying? It also for black people, and that's what the record companies and the industry wants us. They want us to think that with that Super Bowl thing, we've now gotten our victory. They don't want us to say why in our inner city schools, especially in black neighborhoods, are there no tables for all the students? Or why is it that the crime rate is so high in these neighborhoods and we can't stop it? No, all we have to do is sing They Not Like Us. You get the point I'm trying to make. So, and I agree with what you say. He's an avatar for whites to feel good about themselves, except for the rednecks. The rednecks are like, hell no, man. You ain't like us. You ain't like us. That's what the white folks say, the rednecks. But it seems like the liberal whites and people who live in the cities and call themselves, I won't use the word Democrats. By the way, are you a Democrat? Probably, right? I'm just kidding.
No, I wouldn't say so.
Okay, if you would say so, what if you were to identify yourself politically? How would you identify yourself?
Honestly, I mean, like, I don't feel like I'm educated enough in politics and all that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Have you heard of the Green Party? Yeah, I think they're good.
Yeah, but I don't actually know what they stand for, but I heard of it.
Yeah, they stand for social justice. Yeah, you'll learn about them. But it's difficult because in America, politics is driven by money, and the industry is driven by money. And if you notice, Drake and Kendrick Lamar belong to the same record company. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And also, I want to add: have you listened to "Hit 'Em Up" by Tupac?
Yeah.
Have you listened to something? Tell me something. Just be honest with me. Is this beef and battle between Drake and Kendrick Lamar anywhere near what you listen to with Biggie into? This ain't no real beef. And here's another thing. And I want to go deeper. How dare, like they say, how dare you? How dare Kendrick Lamar do an album that's supposed to be about black pride and black identity? Then he put a bunch of lies about Drake in the song. He's a pedophile, A minor. That's a disgrace, because if you're actually writing something that's a celebration of black culture, why would you put those things? Which is why Drake sued his record label, because he knows that those things are lies. So my thing is that why would you sully supposedly a celebration of black identity and black pride because you have beef with another rapper, you call him a pedophile and put all those things in that song to diss him. So you try to have both worlds. You try to prop yourself as an activist, a black activist, and a Pan-Africanist, and at the same time you're dissing Drake for whatever reason. So what I'm trying to say is that I think he should have just left it as a diss track. But now that they're making it some sort of civil rights anthem, it's actually like pissing on the graves of our ancestors. What do you think? I'm serious. What do you think?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are glossing over the fact that not Drake, Kendrick has collabed with a lot of predators in the past, like Dr. Dre,
oh yeah,
Kodak. Yeah. So I think it's hypocritical because He
hypocritical.
told
And I hate to say this, I'm not trying to be mean because I love rap music. You've got guys like Future. Future's never been charged of any crime. But what I'm saying is that hip hop is full of a lot of predators because we've seen because of all these parties that Diddy had. So all of them are predators. And so it's hypocritical. We know that I don't think Kendrick Lamar is a predator, but my thing is that he's calling this guy out for it and says he stands for the culture. But what culture is he standing for? Because if it's hip hop culture, it's full of predators. Yeah, continue. Very good point. What would you like to say on top of that? Yeah, yeah.
like you said, it's not really. I think he's doing this not because he hates Drake, but because he's trying to push an agenda.
Yeah, because I hate to say it, he's their avatar, and we know. I know Kendrick Lamar. I hate to curse in front of you, but back in the day, he said, "I love bad bitches. That's my fucking problem." Blah blah blah. He did songs, well, Poetic Justice, which is a beautiful song, or Loyalty, Loyalty, or Humble. He's done great songs, but I think now he's going down a road where the industry is paying him to be their boy, and I'm not going to blame him because you got to pay for your bills. And even though he's their boy, his music is not negative. Would you say his music is negative? It's not
No,
negative.
even down to the sound of his music. Back in the day, like back in 2013, with Good Kid, Mad City, his music was so much more soulful.
Yeah, with soulful. So I think he's made aesthetic changes. He hasn't lost soul. And I'm going to argue that Drake's music always has soul in it. You get my point? It may not have a lot of content, but Drake is a very good sort of like who's our favorite? You know who our favorite singer? Who's it? SZA. These guys got feeling. Yeah, but Drake will be like, "Nah, I'm a rapper. Don't call me." We all know Drake is a singer. So is Kanye West. So, yeah, but you're right. Kendrick Lamar's music had more soul and more edge and more feeling. But since he did To Pimp a Butterfly and everything, it seems like they're trying to create him into, like you said, their avatar. What I would say is that they want to create him into a symbol of Black wokeness, identity, and everything without addressing the real problem in which there's a crisis in America in which young Black men are killing themselves and can only be known as heroes when they're rappers. We're not being represented properly in America. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's why they gave him a Pulitzer.
Oh yeah, they give him a Pulitzer. And I'm like, I'm busting my butt here trying to become a writer, and he gets a Pulitzer. And I'm not dissing him. I don't think they gave Bob Dylan. They gave Bob Dylan the Nobel Prize. Bob Dylan, he's a songwriter. They gave him the Nobel Prize for. That's also some bullshit. They gave Bob Dylan a Nobel Prize for literature, and they gave Kendrick Lamar a Pulitzer. So what they're trying to tell us is that this is the height of what you guys can do by writing some bars. We all know hip hop is a great art form, but it's a musical form. It's not a literary form. And what I think that we need to start nurturing is making heroes out of our literary. And what I mean by literary is people who write and address the real social problems. You can't address real social problems fully in hip hop unless you're Chuck D. Chuck D from what was he? Not NW. He was from oh come on, I can't even remember who. Chuck D and who sang "Fight the Power." What group was he in again? This is terrible. How could I forget it? Public Enemy. Public Enemy. Oh, yeah. They came close to being political, but my point being is that let musicians be musicians. Kendrick Lamar is a musician. He's not an activist. He's not an activist hero. And let the literary people and the thinkers, not just the thinkers and the activists, the people out on the streets trying to save lives, let them be the voice for our movement. And we still embrace Kendrick Lamar. We also embrace Drake because Drake has never talked about violence in his music. What other thoughts do you have?
I don't really think Kendrick is a civil rights activist, and I think the push toward that type of music is why he's not as, I don't think his music is just as good, right?
It's just not as good, and I don't think that music was meant to be so political because then it loses what its power is. Like you said, it's supposed to be soul, but once you get into soul, you're no longer political. You talk about our suffering. You want to be political, but so are you saying that his music has lost its edge because it's aspiring to be political? Is that what you're saying, or you think that? Well, what exactly are you saying? I might have got it mixed up what you were saying. You said you don't feel it anymore.
Yeah, I just don't feel it. I think he is trying to be more like he always tried to deliver a message, but I feel like the specific message
he's trying too hard because poetry and art should be something that even surprises the artist. You get my point? Like, so what I'm trying to say is when you wake up one morning and you start singing and you're making it up, but once you say, oh, today I'm going to make art about the movement, art never works that way. When you say, for example, if I say I'm going to make a poem about how much I love my girlfriend or my wife or whoever, you get my point? Once I say that, it's no longer art because it's no longer a spontaneous action. Art is spontaneous and it's not driven by any plans or things like. Then after you do the spontaneous action, that's when you start to sculpt it and do the analytical part. You get my point?
Like I think
So
back in 2014,
what are you gonna
he
say?
he made a statement about how he was trying to like save America with one of his albums, and I think that's why he started to like, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. I could tell you've been watching what's that boy's name? Signify. You got that book. No, we watched that before. But yeah, you're right. He wanted and Signifier said, yeah, what's his name? Kitty Signify. He said that sorry for putting you on the spot like that. Maybe I'll delete that part out. Okay. Yeah, but like you said, he got to the point where he wanted to save the world and he tried too hard, and then he started having albums that kind of missed the mark. The albums weren't bad, but they sort of missed the mark. Is that's what you're saying, right? Any other thoughts on that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really, I think, you know. I mean,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
so his last album, what was it called? The album I think it was like 2022. It was
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. The one 2020 where he had Kodak Black on one of the songs. Yeah.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
that had some good songs. Like, you know, that one song where he's talking
That
about
was actually a
generational
decent
trauma.
album. It was a decent
Yeah,
album.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like he had this one song where he talked about generational trauma within like black children and their parents, which I think was a good one. You know?
So I'm trying to download the name of the album, Kendrick Lamar album. I remember, and that album was actually pretty good. And it wasn't about so much about wokeness or black identity. It was more about, it was sort of bluesy too, because he was reflecting on some of the stuff that he's gone through and that black people have gone through. But I think that even that one was a little bit too manufactured, but it was actually good. And I know because
He went back to some of his earlier themes of like family, you know, black family and stuff like that.
Yeah, but yeah, growing up in Compton, because I know a lot of his cousins and stuff were in gangs and stuff, and a lot of his songs about his relationship with his mother and trying to get through the hard times. And that was when he was hungry. That's when he didn't have the super contracts and stuff. And that's when you see the real work. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. But he's not talking about those things. And white folk don't want to hear it. For example, you know and me, who's the one rapper that white folk will never put in mainstream that we listen to all the time? Our favorite rapper who I listened to and pretended like I knew him for 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah,
Steve's, he talks about Reagan. Give me some of his lines. What did he say about Reagan?
He was like, "Oh, I won't stop until Reagan is paged in," meaning that he wants Reagan to face responsibility for what he did.
And he has a lot of songs about the dollar and pimps and stuff and evil people, the root of all evil and all that. And then also he has like Career for Nigeria with like Black Prince from Nigeria.
And he focused on one of the most real issues.
That album is fantastic. What are you gonna say?
Yeah, like he had a couple lines about crack. You know how the crack epidemic is ruining the community, which you don't really see a lot of rappers talking about how drugs ruin the community. You know?
Oh no, they don't talk about how drugs ruined it. They talk about how they're an OG, which is an original gangster who sells the drugs. I'm serious. That's what they talk about. I don't hear people talking about how drugs ruin it. And in Steve's music, he's talking about the U.S. government. He's talking about all of these things, and also he's talking about his feelings and his visions and things like that. You know, no, he's a pure lyricist, and also his friend, what's his name, Badass.
Badass, yeah.
That's real music, and that came out of Brooklyn. Those were young boys who created a neo soul sound, and it was conscious, and it was honest. What are your thoughts? Give us your last thoughts on well, let's switch. Just give us like a minute or two. What do you think about Steve's and Joey Badass and the music those guys were creating? Yeah.
So I feel like Steve's music was very hardcore. You know, it not only did it talk about the real issues, but it felt more angry. Whereas I feel like a lot of rap is more about like irony and the, you know, glorifying.
Yeah, irony is like giving up a little bit. Yeah.
But with Steve's,
go ahead. I think
Lamar's
is almost irony and satire. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I cut in front of you. Go ahead.
I'm trying to remember. Right. He even criticized the kind of like idea that white people have that the only way black people can escape from the hood is through rapping or through drugs. Like in one of his songs, Free the Robots, he was like, "Oh, if this rap shit don't work out, I'm gonna have to go and, you know, sell drugs."
Yes. Yeah, and you've got it down. But what he's saying, he's not saying that's what he's going to do. He's saying that he's going to have to do that if the rap stuff doesn't go. And that's what I was saying earlier. I don't know if I said it to you or someone else, that it seems like the only economy that we have for black people is sports, crime, or entertainment. You get my point? In general, you know, or like us YouTubers. Go ahead. Any last words, man? Thank you. Brilliant show. I'm in awe of you. Love you very much. Any last words? Yeah.
And that's why, at the end of the day, he didn't get signed to that record label. You know, they pushed Joey Badass, and not to say that Joey Badass is like a fraud or, you know, a sellout.
No.
Steve's
not as radical.
Yeah. He was more radical. Yeah, that's why they didn't really want to push him. Which goes back to what you were saying about how you would never see a white person singing "Free the Robots." You know.
No, they will never do that because that means enslave themselves.
Yeah.
because they run the economy. I know they would never say because they haven't gone through that. Maybe Putin would because he's Russian. They black. I'm just kidding. You don't have to do my stupid jokes. Free the free the Cossacks. You know the Cossacks in Russia. All right, good one. Nice one. Nice one.